If you are ready to get uncomfortable and grow your business by the way of speaking, this interview is for you. Miranda Barrett is our next guest, and she founded Capacity to Scale. She's got a tremendous experience when it comes to speaking, scaling your company by utilizing those tools, and her background is so impressive. She's traveled the world with the Clinton administration, Bush, the rock star Bono, and other delegations. So tune in and enjoy my chat with Miranda. Okay, my powerhouses, I have Miranda with us, and I am really looking forward to our conversation, the things that she has to share. And I will say, Miranda, I remember getting off our first initial chat before we scheduled this podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, she has one of the most impressive backgrounds of anyone I have talked to in a very long time, and just super cool. I love getting the journey, from where you started and the things that you did that led you really to your role now. So I would love, if you don't mind, and of course everyone heard your bio, but that always leaves out the important details. I would love for you to just share, a little background on your very unique journey and what led you to doing what you do now.
Sure. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And it's funny to hear, unique journey, because it was also a very messy journey and a very non-linear, all over the place, zigzaggy kind of journey. But I would trace it all back to, 3 weeks into my freshman year here at GW, George Washington University here in DC. I felt like I had too much free time. And, being an overachiever, I started looking around for an internship. And through a series of very fortunate coincidences and a kind volunteer, I ended up interning at the White House and was there for several years. And one day came into the office and they said they needed someone to fly to Germany right away, which is not a typical experience, for an intern or volunteer. I was in the right place at the right time. I had never left the country before. I was from a small southern town in North Carolina, and I was in the middle of my midterms and was suddenly faced with this, take this passport, go get on a plane, nothing set up on the other end, figure it out kind of situation. And I did it, dropped everything, called all my professors apologizing from Frankfurt. And that launched this incredible adventure with the White House Travel Office, being part of advanced teams. When President Clinton would travel, we would go out 2 weeks ahead of time and set up for that. So I got to see the world while still kind of clinging to my student identity and just scraping by and hoping they weren't taking attendance on a regular basis. But I learned so much from that experience. And really, I can trace the entire trajectory of my career from that start.
It's so cool. And truly, it probably was such a good springboard for you to be an entrepreneur. It's yeah, sure, let's just jump in and figure it out. And so in your blood, from the beginning, it sounds like. And who gets those kind of experiences? I feel like that is something where you really just can't say no, right? So, and look, when you said it was a messy, nonlinear journey, I don't know of one journey that was not messy and linear. So just for what it's worth. And we always feel like it's, I think we're the only one, or it's a rare thing. And the adventure is part of what makes it so cool some of the time, even though if it's really painful along the way, and those can get. So
I hear you. So the crazy thing is I'm married to someone who's had a perfectly linear, started out as a copy kid at the New York Post and has worked for newspapers and wire services his whole life. Just very steady progression, organizations offering him jobs when he wasn't even looking. While meanwhile, I was still trying to figure out, what I wanted to be when I grew up, a few years ago. And so it is an interesting position with the two of us, because he's very much on this set trajectory, and I have to do a lot more kind of exploration and figuring it out and come to terms with that being okay.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. So, but is your husband an entrepreneur?
No, he's a reporter.
Okay, so I think maybe that's the difference, right? As far as, and at least from my experience, like the someone who ends up being a business owner typically zigs and zags a little bit versus where that employee does will have more of a linear path. And it's actually funny. My husband, same, very linear, always did the same thing and just progressed. But it's an interesting thing. And so now that you are in a position of running your own business and you left being in a support role most of your career, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And then when you decided, hey, this isn't for me anymore. I think I want to start my own journey and carve that. Walk me through that. What went through your mind? What happened? What was the impetus to just say, I'm going all in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started. I was fortunate to be at the Entrepreneurs Organization for 10 years in a vice president role, wore a variety of hats. It seems like every time I came back from maternity leave, which was twice, I would have a new job. And so, while that was challenging, it also gave me the opportunity to explore a lot of different roles and functions and work with some really, truly incredible entrepreneurs who have been so supportive of me the last 15 years and mentors and sent referrals and encouragement and all these kind of things as I start on this journey. So having those relationships in my back pocket with me has been so wonderful. And I think during those 10 years, it was just seeing getting to see firsthand what it was like to run a company, right? The ups and downs, the highs and lows, and the stress they were all going through. I remember being on a trip with a group of women entrepreneurs to Latin America, and we went through airport security, and a few of them all got pulled aside, and it was clear they unpacked their bags, right, which is always so fun, and discovered they all had mouth guards packed because they all ground their teeth at night from stress, right? And just seeing that, it was like a row of everyone's toiletry bags with mouth guards, and they had such a laugh over it, but at the same time, there's sort of a sad truth that there was, they were internalizing that. So I think I went into this with very, very clear eyes with what it means from having spent so much time in the company of entrepreneurs. But I think for me, just that opportunity for freedom was so important. I mean, the idea of someone telling me how many vacation days I can get or where I have to physically be located just makes me giggle now. I think I'm officially unemployable because I value that freedom so much. And I love having flexibility, especially in the summer when I want to take off with my kids and spend time at the lake and not be glued to a desk all the time. And I think just that ownership over how we spend our lives is so wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I always say I would be the worst employee because I am now so accustomed to just calling the shots and doing everything as far as like having control, right, over all the decision making that it would be a no-go for me. So thank God I do own my own business. So the going through that and then starting your own business and of which, by the way, you have a business that ironically, we talked a little bit about having some imposter syndrome and through that transition, but you train on something that I think terrifies the crap out of most people. And so how did you, I suppose, like know that number one, this was for you and really talking about speaking and getting into that. But then what is one of the things or maybe even some of the things that you hear frequently when working with clients and how do you help navigate through that discomfort and getting comfortable in front of a crowd and going and talking to people?
Sure. So my company, Capacity to Scale, helps public speakers with everything they need before and after the microphone to get the most ROI out of their speaking, to really connect with their audiences, build that engagement, and have that ultimately convert to business or relationships or donations or whatever it is that they want to get out of that public speaking, right? And I came to that really through an exercise where you line up the circles, right? Of what do you love doing and what are you good at and what is the market going to pay for? And I spent a lot of time on that. Honestly, it took me a while to arrive at it, and then when it did, it was just this bolt of lightning. As of course, why wasn't I doing this 5 years ago? Because I love events. Thanks to my time at Entrepreneurs Organization, White House, other places. I've been in a lot of events, especially in the association industry, which is, primarily where a lot of speakers are booked for conferences and expos and things like that. And I have this wonderful network of business owners who really want to do more public speaking, but they don't want to jump into the hassle of all the marketing and building their talk and presentations and lead capture and all those things that go into it, right? They just want to be able to walk on stage, grab the microphone, and just start wowing audiences. At least most of them do. But to your point, it is interesting to hear from these people who outwardly appear to be so successful and confident, right? Like they have these amazing experiences to share. They're great speakers, and even folks like that, they really do second guess themselves whether they should be delivering a talk, whether they should be sharing their experience and their message. And one of my favorite quotes that I use when I come across someone in this position is show up to give, right? I first heard it from Simon Sinek in one of his courses. But if you're showing up to give, it really reduces that pressure and nervousness on yourself of like 15 other objectives you might have for your talk, right? You're there to help people, and in the hopes that your experience and your knowledge is going to make a positive change for somebody. So I think that's just a great way to approach it, or really anything else that's making you nervous. Drop all the other expectations and just show up to give.
I love that. And I think we discount not only what we have to share, but then when you're sharing it, all of the things that go around it to maximize that time on a stage. And I'm glad you brought it up, because we have so many clients and even conversations where these women want to get on more stages, but they don't always understand all of the moving parts that go along with that. Because it takes a lot of time to prepare for a talk and perfect the talk, and then the energy to go out there and do it and get that. So if you could, what would you say as far as the process, start to finish, what that looks like to really leverage your time well?
Sure. And I think for people who are kind of newer on it, maybe given a few talks, but want to start going bigger, you have to understand it's really a calendar game, right? Because most conferences start looking for speakers 6 to 7 to even 8 months before the event is going to take place. You can't suddenly, in January say, I'd really like to be on stage in March, unless you're looking at much smaller kind of local lunchy kind of things, right? So, for starters, I really recommend people start keeping a list of all the organizations they think would be a great fit. I mean, your LinkedIn feed right now is probably full of people who are posting how excited they were to be attending this or how honored they were to be speaking at this. And you're going, shoot, why wasn't I there? Well, write that down, right? Capture it, because chances are if that event took place in March of this year, it's going to take place in March of next year. And so it's just getting a little organized and getting that tracking built. The second thing to do is really have those materials ready, because there's going to be things you come across that will have a quick deadline. And for the most part, organizations are not sympathetic about extending that, because they probably have 10 speaking slots and 100 people applying, right? So you coming in and saying, oh, I'd really like to, but my video's not ready, that's not going to work. So getting prepared with, those basic things that show your credibility and make you seem like less of a risk. I always say that if a speaker is terrible on stage, people aren't really angry at the speaker. They're angry at the person who chose the speaker, right? And so that's a scary role to have to be responsible for. The people who are in charge of learning programs for events, it is terrifying. You are on pins and needles the whole event that someone's going to tank, right? I've seen that firsthand many times. And so it's about showing them that you're a safe bet. And you do that through having materials that show your credibility. So testimonials, videos, website, your LinkedIn presence, showing your expertise, and also showing that you're there to give and teach. You're not there to sell anything. That's the fastest way to get rejected with your speaking proposal, is if it comes across in the least little hint of salesy, you're done, because nobody wants to be sold to from the stage.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing. I know that wasn't even what I had in mind for today, but I'm like, you know what? This is the perfect opportunity, because it's asked all the time. So I think that in knowing that lead time is huge as well, because I think, again, we just don't understand how much time, and then we're disappointed when they say next year, right? So that's huge. And shifting gears a little bit, we talked before we started recording, Miranda, about one of your core values and how you got there. And so I would love for you to share that in terms of the support role and how it can be looked at negatively as an entrepreneur or even within the world of women leaders and how you converted that into one of your company superpowers.
Absolutely. Well, so our first and main core value is show up to give, which we just talked about. The other one that I've arrived at, in the last few weeks as something that's deeply important to me is to be radically supportive. And that means radically supportive to our clients internally as a team and everything that we do. And I think as women, sometimes we can be judged for this, right? Like it's not a very aggressive kind of quality when you think about, a strong business person. And for me, being raised the way I was in the South, a lot of hospitality and hostessing and all those good things, it's a sign of caring about people. And during my time at the Entrepreneurs Organization, I like to think that was something I was known for. If I was in a meeting and I noticed someone was out of water, I'd make sure that they got water. If they missed the meal because they were working so late, I'd make sure that there was a plate set out. And I've often gotten feedback that, that's a very feminine kind of quality. And I've decided I'm just rejecting that. First of all, I know plenty of very supportive men. I'm lucky to have them in my life. And second, that's just the way that I choose to interact with people. So on the client side, I had a client who was very nervous about a speech and she was going through her wardrobe and sending me pictures. And I realized that I had the perfect necklace that would go with her outfit. And it was my grandmother's. So of course I loaned her my grandmother's necklace for her talk. If someone were to spill ketchup on their shirt before a speech, I would literally happily give them the shirt off my back. And I think doubling down on that and embracing it is something that people who are in the speaking space really appreciate, because to your earlier point, it is scary and nerve-wracking, even for experienced speakers. So, with people we work with, yes, we are texting you the night before your speech saying you're going to do a great job. We are checking in with you. We are congratulating you and celebrating you and posting about you on our social media accounts, because you've done something really hard and it deserves to be celebrated. And we are going to be radically supportive of you that whole journey.
And that is such a straight, and that takes an extraordinary amount of diligence, time, organization. I mean, all of these very strong, if you will, qualities, right? But the fact that we call them feminine is so interesting, because it's really the ability to be human and be kind and to have some foresight and to give a shit, right? And the feeling that people get when they know you care goes such a long way. And for a core value as well as like a corporate culture, what I have learned is that it really makes people more likely to stick around, because they know that there's that connection deeper than just clocking in and clocking out. And so it really does. And we try to practice that. I love the term radically supportive. Is not something that not a term that I have used, but we try to follow a similar approach here. And it did take a conversion. And for me, I was never really in a support role, beyond like bartending, waitressing, which is very, very different, right? That's really just a thick skin role. Right? And different to you, Miranda, like I had to go through learning how to be better support, a better cheerleader, better at remembering to tell my team they're doing awesome versus just thinking it all the time. And so for me, it was something that took a lot of hard work and time, because it wasn't I'm always like, where are we going? What do we need to talk about? And everything else feels like a waste of time, right? And so for me, it was not only a learning curve, but it was fundamental in changing the way people feel, how they show up, how hard they work, and they're wanting to be here. And so it is just so extremely valuable. And I just want to highlight that, because I'm probably not the only one where it wasn't necessarily a forethought on showing up and running a business. And I think too, the role of an entrepreneur is changing. And it has changed, especially with these younger generations. Their expectations are higher. And so to be able to provide that culturally and then have it within your fabric, I think is just such a beautiful thing. And, call it what you want. It creates really, really strong integrity within your organization. So I think that's super cool.
Thank you.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, when you went into business yourself and really started to build out capacity to scale, how did you scale? What were some of the challenges that you had to navigate in deciding when it was right to really begin to grow? And what were some of the I suppose, pivot points that you had to go through, if you don't mind sharing those, because those are always valuable things, especially if somebody is feeling a bit stuck or terrified to grow and expand. But if you don't, you may just work yourself into the ground. So I'd love to hear your insight there.
For sure. And I mean, to be totally transparent, we are still figuring it out, right? We are still growing and scaling. I
Yeah.
had someone on the team just yesterday I'm super excited about. I'm interviewing a bookkeeper tomorrow. So we are still like we are in fast growth mode, and some days it's terrifying, and most days it's a little terrifying if I'm being honest. But I've become a huge fan of who not how, right? And every time I
Oh,
find
yeah.
myself stuck on something that's screaming at QuickBooks on a Saturday afternoon, I was like, okay, I need a who. I don't need to be Googling. And so I really, I was a solo consultant for almost 2 years, right? As I was figuring out what I wanted to do. And it was not with this focus on speaking. I was sort of doing strategic projects. I was sort of helping entrepreneurs in my network get unstuck with certain things in the business, saying yes to a lot of things. And it was definitely a period of exploration, trying to find what that thing was going to be, because I knew I needed to be more specific, more niche, because there were a lot of people who wanted to help me, but I honestly couldn't tell them what it was that I wanted. And that was such a good lesson that, the people around you are going to want to do things for you. But if you don't have the clarity yet to tell them what those things are, you're not ready for it. And it took me almost 2 years really of just listening and working really hard, and then working too hard, to realize that the public speaking just got me so excited. If I was interviewing a new client and they would mention 2, 3 things they needed help with, and the speaking was one of them, I would jump on that so fast. Like, yes, let's do this. I know I can help you. Like, that got me so excited. And I love having those conversations with them about what they wanted to share in their presentation. And so it was really only a few months ago that I got that focus. And that was the point where I realized, as a solopreneur, I wasn't going to be able to take it very far. So I dipped my toes in with a part-time virtual assistant. And honestly, it scared the crap out of me. Like, it kept me awake at night for 3 weeks. This was like a $250 a week commitment that was like stressing me out, because I had this person looking to me for work.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was like having to scramble and come up with stuff for her because I didn't know what to do. And I was literally on a phone call about to tell her that it wasn't going to work out. And then it's like, okay, no, we have to figure this out. And now she's an incredible value member of the team, as well as several other people. And so I think forcing myself to stick with it and work it through all that discomfort and fear and all the other head trash that we have was really unlocking the door. And that was only, that was 3 months ago, 4 months ago. So it has been really quick. And now we have a part-time a team of about 5 part-time people, all with certain functions, continuing to expand that. I want to keep surrounding myself with good who's, not how's, and recognizing what I most enjoy doing that gives me the best energy, that is the best for the business, and clearing the space around me to keep going bigger on that.
Yeah, that's wild. I did not realize. And that was so recent rather, and so extraordinary growth in a short amount of time. And that is terrifying. And I always go through that too. And I actually were dealing with something very similar. We added a new employee recently, and it was one of those things where she was just the perfect who, and quality, brilliant. I knew that we could use her, but I wasn't exactly I know we don't have enough work quite yet, but I didn't want to let her go, because to find quality people, as you know, and I'm sure every business owner listening right now knows, it's like impossible to find really good people. So I want to capitalize on that. And now I'm navigating like, shit, how can I learn all over again, right? To delegate, and how can I help my team learn to delegate, and navigating all of that. And for those of you who don't know, when Miranda was saying Who Not How, that is a great book, Who Not How, if you are in expansion mode and really feeling exhausted with the things touching that you shouldn't be touching that are outside of your zone of genius. Like that's the stuff that costs you money. And it feels so counterintuitive because you're paying somebody else to do it. But in truth, like, and you can probably, it's so recent now, like you're now realizing you're able to spend your time on more revenue generating activities versus getting stuck in the minutia of all this stuff that just feels so depleting, right?
Yeah, I think I could easily just, spend all my time on that hamster wheel, right? Like, because we're at the point now where the business is generating enough client work that I could just spend all my time heads down in client work and have a 60-hour a week job, right? But then nobody who's growing the business, right? That's what my role needs to be as CEO is constantly, looking at what are really cool new products we can be looking at, what innovation is happening in the space, how do we attach ourselves to that? How do we stay very visible and relevant in the association industry because that's so helpful to our clients and the amazing speakers that we work with. So I'm trying to get very clear about what my role needs to be that's best for the company and then find who's that can take the rest. And to your point, I mean, the financial commitment is scary, right? Like every time I work on our balance sheet and just look at the monthly expenses that are growing and the amount of revenue needed to cover it, that gives me pause every single time. Maybe I just need to find someone to do that bit for me, so I'm not in there. But so far, it's the more that you put yourself out there, the more the universe opens up to accommodate it, right? And the higher level, I'm need to 10x myself if I'm going to 10x the business. And so continuing to push and challenge and let go of that head trash and just keep saying yes to things that I know are what the business needs to get to the level I want it to be.
Absolutely. It's huge. And 10X is easier than 2X is another great book.
Yes.
But it's terrifying. And this is my year of trying to do that as well, and really saying, okay, like now what's next? Where are we going? And it is uncomfortable as hell because it's that ownership of, I could stay where I am, but I don't want to. And now I have no idea what that looks like. Right. It's like the what is that expression? New level, new devil, right? And then finding the who and the support of what you need. And so are there any, are you in entrepreneurs organization right now? Are you using a coach? Who or what are you using, Miranda, for yourself to help with that mindset and ability to continue to run at the pace that you're running? Is there any outside support that you're using as far as advisors go?
Absolutely, tons. And I would highly recommend that to anyone else who is going it alone because you just can't go it alone, right? Or if you want to be growing. So for me, I'm now in EO's Accelerator program, which is it's just so exciting for me because there were plenty of sessions I've sat through as a staff member in the room, with the role of like taking notes and making sure lunch arrived. And now to be there as a full participant is really fun. And I'll be speaking at several EO events as well. And I'm also in a group called Consulting Success that's for consultants. And they were really the first about a year and a half ago to put me with a coach and really start challenging my scarcity mindset and start sort of pushing me to think bigger and invest in myself and invest in the business. So those two groups have been enormously helpful. I'm evaluating a couple of different coaches. I know that's what I need to do next. For my growth. And then just staying really current with what everyone's reading, different industry groups, really spending as much time working on myself as I do on the business.
Yeah, I love that. And I was hoping you would answer it that way, of course. But yes, if you want to grow and pay for speed, hiring coaches is huge, and asking for help is another superpower and shit. Like I wish I would have hired my first business coach a lot sooner than I did. I wish I would have found EO sooner than I did. But I didn't. But here we are. And I'll always have a coach. And of course, for, being a business coach as well, it's like I feel like owe it to your clients to constantly be taking and consuming that personal development and education. It's so huge. And so I'm always curious what everybody else is doing. And because you mentioned the accelerator, we in Buffalo, New York, Rochester, Buffalo area, we are launching a new accelerator program this year. Our region took a sabbatical for a little bit of time, so it's finally available. So if there are any local business owners who are listening to this, where your revenue's at the 250 mark and you're looking to scale to $1 million, we do have that available now, which is super cool through EO. So big changes here, and to be respectful of your time, Miranda, is there anything else or a lasting message that you would love to leave with the listeners?
Yeah, I think one thing that's always stuck with me was from my days as a camp counselor, right? I worked in summer camp in North Carolina. It was probably the best career preparation you could ever have, being stuck in a cabin with a group of 8-year-olds for the entire summer. And I was learning how to rock climb, right? Which is something I'd never done before. And when you're climbing and you're on the side of a rock, your natural inclination is just to cling as tightly as you can and flatten yourself against the rock. And I remember so clearly the owner of the camp was belaying me and he yells up at me. He's like, lean back and trust your feet. And that has just always stuck with me because when you're climbing, if you lean back and kind of form that angle, you've got a much sturdier grip with your feet. And for me, every time I have something scary to do and the inclination is to say no and grab onto the wall as fast as I can, that voice with the Southern drawl always comes back to me that what I need to do is lean back and trust my feet and just keep climbing. And so that's something that's been helpful to me. I'm sure everyone has their own little phrase, but if you're next time you're rock climbing, just remember that one.
That is probably one of the best analogies that we have gotten on this show yet. Thank you. It's out. My God, it's so relevant. I love that. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And for everyone listening, we, of course, will have all of Miranda's contact information and links in the show notes so that you can connect with her, especially if you are looking to scale with speaking. So until next time, my powerhouses, continue to be courageous.